All right, today is Monday, September 1st. And today, one major topic. How do you stay up to date in your current role with trainings?
Yeah, we talk about getting that first cyber job. How do you stay up to date once you get there?
Exactly.
This is the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damien.
This is Troy.
And it's your boy, Bert. Let's go. So two people walk into a room, director and a CEO, and director says, hey, our employees need training. The CEO says, we can't do that. It's expensive. Besides, if we spend the money, what happens if they leave? And the director says, well, what happens if we don't get training and they stay? Go.
Yeah, that's always the problem. I think this is actually a really good topic because as leaders, we're always trying to maintain, at least a modern trained staff.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? Because you never have enough money to keep up with, traditional training. Have you seen some of these classes?
No.
You know how much a SANS course costs these days?
I know some of the teachers. I don't know how much it costs. How much is it?
Actually, 8,000 maybe.
Yeah.
8,000 for a course plus a cert because we like to get the course and they want to get a certification that goes with the course. It's like $8,000. In some cases, but in some ways, Damien, this is almost like a benefit to the employees. It's like part of their bonuses or their package is like you're going to get your salary plus bonuses, plus we're going to give you X amount of training courses per year, certifications, because that's going to improve their career.
I don't know how many people actually do that though. I mean, it's very hard to say, okay, I'm going to set aside $10,000 a year. I mean, that's just the training class. I mean, I get it. SANS is like, one of the most well-known ones. So there's other ones out there, but I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah, it's expensive because it is very good and highly credited too. So they're just going to say that it's expensive, but it is absolutely worth it. And those certificates mean a lot to hiring managers and to the people who get them. Yeah,
but do you actually look at putting aside $10,000 per person for the training, or what about?
Well, to be honest with you, yeah, I mean we earmarked that in our annual budget. At my previous roles, both, not just my most previous role, but and I tried to set aside some money. And sometimes it was SANS, in my last company it was. In some other companies it was different tracks. But what we wanted to do is make sure that every employee had at least one training per year that they could hang their hat on getting and getting a certification. And it just kind of keeps the morale up as well.
No, I mean, we'll talk about that in a second, but I don't think there's a lot of organizations that say, okay, I'm going to set aside $10,000 per cyber employee. That's just,
or technology employee.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to expand out beyond just cyber, but I'm just focusing on cyber today, right? What about the rest of the IT team? What about the developers who have to have secure coding experience? So, I mean, it doesn't end, and I think that if you're listening to this or watching it, let us know, right? I'd like to know what you guys are doing for trying to budget this type of training, because I don't think it's normal. Not that amount. I do agree with you, Troy. I think there is, you do want to have at least some training through the year, but it's not going to be top tier SANS class for $8,000 for every single person every year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that you do save that for your rock stars and those people who really show motivation and loyalty to the company too, right? It's a double-edged sword because you're improving their skill set and they're becoming even more, attractive to hiring managers across the country. So you're really training him or her to leave. And you don't want that. So you want to create that loyalty. So what we did was we created a system where, people as part of their, evaluations and they got good merits and this many points and they were excelling or they were a rock star, we would reward them with those more expensive classes. But we made other trainings available to everyone, something that was either self-service or it came from, the big platforms, Microsoft, Amazon, Google have different types of training that is zero cost to enterprises. So, there was a good plethora of opportunities, but we did reserve those most expensive ones for the people who showed that motivation to be excellent at their job.
So are you worried though, that they got that training that they would leave?
That's a great question, Fern. I'm glad you asked, because I think this is why people don't provide training. And I think it's the absolute wrong assumption. I think a lot of hiring managers fear that if they train up their staff is going to leave them. But I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that if you encourage your team to better themselves and in there better their career, whether it's with you or outside your company, you can't control that. So stop trying to control that. Start providing these services and these trainings to your employees, because they look at it as a massive benefit and they will become even more loyal to you. It's kind of like when you're dating somebody, you're really clingy and you just want all the control. You want every minute of their day. That's going to make that person want to leave you, right? So same thing in a job where they don't feel recognized, they don't feel rewarded with trainings. They're going to want to go look somewhere else. But if you celebrate them, you celebrate their wins, you provide them trainings and other opportunities to excel within your company, what you'll find is that these people will be very loyal to you, and they'll stick it out with you.
I think the difference here, Troy, is that you've worked for very large organizations with very large budgets. I'll tell you this, the last 3 or 4 places I've worked, we've never had enough money for training, ever. I would love to go and send everyone to the best training and make sure they're rewarded. But honestly, that's not what happens.
So here's an interesting thing that I can tell you from experience is, especially around and some of the larger manufacturers, like I still remember training SKUs, right? And there's so many units that you can get in a pack. And typically a pack is like 100 pack or 10 pack, and it was like $100 or $1,000, and they kind of went like from there. But you would redeem these packs for training, so you could use them for any sort of training. The one thing that I think most people don't think about, whether they're in leadership or they're just in engineering, is how they can leverage their purchasing of technology to get training.
Yeah, but that is very specific training to that vendor and to that product. And quite honestly, you shouldn't really have to pay a whole lot for it, right? I think I agree there should be some fee for it, because you have to probably get an instructor, and there's course development that happens there. But sometimes a lot of those are free. A lot of the certifications are free if you're a customer.
So a lot of them are free, but a lot of them you have to pay for, right? And the easiest way to get them for free is just to build them into your purchase.
But then that's not free.
Well,
you're just shifting where it's being paid from.
Yeah, but you're shifting where it's being paid from. But in most cases, people don't even ask for it, right? So it's something that, so say you have your price and it's $100 or whatever it is, and you're ready to go purchase. I've seen it plenty of times where people wait to the last minute and try and build in training for free. So they know it's going to be $100 and say, hey, we want to get training. You can't expect to get $10,000 in training for a $10,000 purchase, obviously. But I think realistically, if you're making a purchase and you have that going up through legal and for procurement and things like that, realistically, if you ask for 1 to 2% of the purchase price for training, it's not an issue. And trust me, the manufacturers have the wiggle room to do it. You just have to ask. But most time people don't ask. Like I would say out of 10 transactions, maybe 2 had training included.
Yeah, I think that's a real good piece of advice. Ask for the training to be bundled in, but just be aware that you are paying for it, right? You might get a discount on it because you're bundling it. Mm-hmm. But again, that is just specific to that tool, that vendor, and their product line, right? Doesn't cover things like RSA, or maybe. I mean, some vendors do sponsor it, and sometimes they do get vendor passes.
So one of the interesting things too is like if you buy like a storage vendor or any sort of vendor, right? And they have a conference, right? We're going to one in next week or a couple weeks from now. When you go to those events, generally they have certification tracks that you can go to, and a lot of times they're free, or a lot of times you can get them for free.
No, I've tried. They're not totally free, but you can get them bundled in.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of one very specific in the storage world, right? But because we don't name names around here, we can't really say it.
I think a lot of these vendors actually treat them as a line item, so they do need to break even or make money off of their own conferences.
The funny thing is, like, when I was at the Fortune 500, but I want to go back to something you said, Damien, coming from a large enterprise, but, I started an e-health company with a team of 10 people, or a litigation services company with a team of less than 20. And it just seems like training always is that one thing that is an invaluable that you can give to your employees to help keep them motivated to stay in the role. And I'll give you an example to Fern's point is at my last company, we bought an EDR solution. And one of the things that I negotiated was, yes, get some training for the entire team. I want everybody in the SOC and security operations to understand how to use this tool. It's so important to be able to run that timeline. But I found 2 of my most key star employees, and I said to the vendor, look, these are my 2 prized employees who are the best at the SOC, and I really rely on them for a lot of things. I want you to train them to be ninjas in this product. And so the vendor, it wasn't even a line item or a specific class. They just started opening the world of trainings up to these employees, and they were able to go to, local events that they held, and also, meet other engineers that were into it. And so at the end of the day, I think vendors should be more open to that, because what happens is you start kind of getting this ingrained engineering mindset amongst your populace, and it's a selling point. So when those engineers go to a new company, guess which one they're going to represent or going to recommend to that new company. I think training by vendors should be looked at a little bit differently than a cost factor that they can just throw in there and make extra money on the deal, because it's really creating raving fans amongst your most important user base of the SOC.
Not even fans, but just a competent administrator or user of your tool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like one thing that most people don't realize is there are a lot of vendors that work with one person within an organization, right? And whether it's, we'll just say EDR, right? You're only working with maybe one person or 2 people. And a lot of times when that product comes up for renewal, that person is usually the one fighting to keep certain products in place, right? And here's another issue. If you don't have multiple people using your product or aware of what you do, the minute that person leaves, they might be an option for you to sell to at the next company. But more than likely, if whoever replaces them doesn't like the technology and the people below or above aren't aware of its capabilities, well, a lot of times what you'll find is that renewal goes nowhere, right? It doesn't get renewed. Right. So exactly. That's where I think the training comes important.
Well, you're looking at it from like a vendor. Yeah, provide the training, which I get. But also internally, right? You can't be just that one person that only knows. Like if you're trying to protect your job,
your
right, your kingdom. Yeah, like, hey, I own this. I'm not going to share any knowledge. That's a bad habit to get into as well. I like the whole concept of you train the trainer. So yeah, you send that one person to training, they become an expert. But the expectation is when they come back, they should be training 3 other people.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I think the reality is it, to me, from what I've seen on the sales side, is people tend to neglect the training. And then when it comes to working with their partners, usually it doesn't really come up. And what ends up happening is that product doesn't get its full utilization. The business may not see the ROI on the product, right? But had that training been baked in, or had that training been asked for, and the adoption across the board was a lot deeper than what it would be normally, that's like a successful deployment, right?
Yeah.
So I
think about this for 1 second, Fern. Think about this. Most vendors, especially the smaller startups, some of the bigger ones, you look at this number on a quarterly basis, but imagine being a startup founder or a small company founder. You're looking at net customer retention. Year over year, how many customers are staying on your platform? The number one key to keeping customers is to keep that voice alive. You mentioned something, Fern, that I don't know that most people think about, is that when it comes time to renew, when it comes time, I have a 2-year contract, 3-year contract, whatever it is, and it's time to renew that product. If you don't have support from the line people who are using it hands-on keyboard, you are going to lose favor with the decision maker and the buyer. And if heavens to Betsy, if that person has changed seats and is a new CISO or a new procurement person, you might lose this multi-million-dollar deal because you didn't include some small training and actually get people up to speed on what that product is and make sure they're seeing a return on investment for what that is supposed to do.
Yeah, so, I've been in that situation. I've been in a situation where there's been a multi-6-figure deal that was up for renewal, and the person that was the main point of contact for it, who was kind of like keeping everything guarded, ended up leaving the company. And when it came time for the renewal, everyone else was like, oh, the only reason we used that was because that person actually liked it a lot and they were the only person that managed it. But now that they're gone, the rest of the team wants to go in a different direction, right?
Yeah. And most of the people didn't like the guy that left either. So they're like, just get it out. It reminds us of him.
Oh, I don't want to say that. But I have seen this. And even in infrastructure situations too, a lot of people, some decision makers might purchase one technology stack over another, and then as soon as they're gone, it gets ripped apart, right? A lot of these like the converged infrastructure type stuff. I've seen people that buy a certain version of it, and as soon as that person leaves, they rip it apart, and then they just move everything else in other places. But
yeah, I think there's more to that problem than just training, though.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we talked about vendors and sellers, why they should be maybe leading with including training from day one, right?
The manufacturer sellers should always have it in
everybody
there somewhere.
The manufacturer sellers, the
vendors.
partners, right? Everybody involved in that whole selling process should be talking about training and getting teams up to speed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we got retention problems with that technology or adoption, potentially. The second part of it, which we kind of touched about in the beginning, was, is there enough budget within an organization to be able to do trainings, right? I think that conversation is always a tricky one because every organization has a different
outlook.
View of, how much is that training worth? Should it be part of just normal compensation for an employee to include it in as, hey, we're going to bring in X number of employees and everyone needs a certain dollar amount for training to stay up to date. And then the third one, actually, when we could talk about it a little bit later, is if you're an employee and you're trying to get training, how do you convince your boss that I should, put something in the budget so I can get training? Or how do you justify that? I think that's a big angle as well that we should probably cover.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But before we get to that one, I don't think we finished the whole budgeting justification from the management leadership level.
I know it's budget season right now, right?
That's why I think we're talking about
rabbit
it.
Season.
I think a lot of organizations are thinking about how to plan for next year's budget. We're coming to the close of calendar year 2025. So we're looking at 2026. Do you have a line item on your budget? Right, that's a good question for a lot of leaders. And is it enough? How much is it per person?
It's a good question. And is it per person, right? Like I said, I think that the balance here is really, understanding that there are some free trainings out there and it's available to everyone, and you reserve some of the more expensive trainings for those people who show the motivation to be there and to be loyal and excel. Maybe as an added bonus, the top 1% of the department gets a SANS training or something like that. It just depends on your company's budget. If you've had $0 for all these years, you might want to throw some money into the pot that you can use and separate for the next year. But I think it's really about having the ability to help improve the people and have that culture of both self-improvement, but also that we're going to reward you if you go out and get a certification. Maybe you don't pay for the training, but if your employee uses their own time and money or even just their time to go get a certain certification that's relevant for their role, maybe they get an extra, something in their paycheck, or they get something on their evaluation at the end of the year that shows that they are really trying to be the best they can be for that role.
Yeah, let me hit on something real quick because you mentioned it, and it's going to be important on the flip side when we talk about from the employee angle.
Yeah.
How do you decide who to give that training to? And I think, Troy, you mentioned it, right? If there's a rock star, but let's define that, right? Who do you decide? Yeah. It's not just the rock stars. I think there's a balance. Is there a need to up-level somebody that maybe they're not a rock star yet, but they could be?
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
So I don't want people to think, hey, we only award
trainings,
the top performer with trainings, and then leave the people that need the improvement to not get training or not get.
Sometimes the rock star is not the one who is the best at their job, though. We talked about this a couple of episodes back on the soft skills, people that show up, people that are at work every day that you can count on. I mean, they may not know everything that the people that we're labeling rock stars know and how to solve an incident in seconds, but they show up, they learn, they're a sponge, they want to be a part of everything that's going on so they can learn from it. They just show that motivation. That in and of itself is a rock star in some ways. So, we had a grading system where we would, take all of our employees and they would get, the numbers, whatever your scale is, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. And we would take those top 10 and we would sit as a management group across technology, DevSecOps, all that stuff. And we would, align them with what we believe were those top performers to give those special bonuses to, trainings to, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a way in every company to sort that out, but it doesn't have to always be the person that knows everything. It's the people who show up and support others and support the culture of the team that can also be considered rock stars in that same manner.
Yeah. I think there are going to be certain people that aren't quite there yet, but have the promise to potentially step up. And maybe there is a gap in knowledge in the entire department that you want to cover. I think the one thing that I'm always careful of is, not having people come to me and say, hey, you're just favoring certain employees. They get all the trainings, they get all the, the travel, like they get to go to all the conferences, and you're excluding half the team. So you got to be careful not to just favor certain people because you like them, right? That's
a problem. Yes, absolutely. That's a balance, right?
Be very transparent in how you make those decisions.
I think we sit here with a lot of assumptions, right? That assuming that people have the best intent, that managers are balanced and equal and don't show favoritism. I mean, we know that exists out there, but when we speak from this chair about opportunities and balancing, we assume that managers are cognizant of the diversity of their teams and the people that have, been shown extra love, so to speak, over time, and that they can balance that out. And, Damon, as you mentioned, how many rock stars have we seen as diamonds in the rough? We see people that we want to see have the opportunity. Some take it on their own, some get a little help, and they show up and they really shine. So it's a great thing to watch from a leadership perspective.
So what about the people that want the training, but they're not getting it, right? Mm-hmm. I think maybe one important thing to think about is, I think everyone obviously wants it to some extent. They want to level up, right? I don't want to say everyone is like that. I think a lot of people want to progress in their career, and training is a big part of that, right? Being able to go to the right courses or learn the right things, put certain things on your resume, have mentors and things like that. But I've seen situations where not everyone asks for help, right? And whether it's like a personal preference or whatever it might be, not everyone asks for certain things. Like they might say that they want to do it, but they don't come out and explicitly say, hey, what do I have to do to get a training done, right? So I'm kind of curious because I'm thinking of a couple examples of what I've seen from people that I've worked with in the past on like the client side, where they'll tell me what they're trying to do. And like, hey man, you think you can help me out with some stuff? Like, how do we do this? Because I know my boss isn't going to cover the cost, but like, if we can bake something in, like that'll help me out major, right? So it's, maybe like a senior engineer or an architect saying, hey, we're going to make a purchase. Can you put something in there for me? Because I know the business isn't going to do it. And I've done that plenty of times. But I guess my question more so is, what happens if people aren't asking for it? Do you just...
Let's back up for a second. If that's the way the conversation goes, is that ethical?
To build in trainings?
Yeah. Like if you're like, hey, can you hide some training in here for me? Is that ethical?
I don't think they're necessarily asking for you to hide it or for me to hide it. It was more so, hey, we're making a purchase. Give us, what do they call it? Give us a better deal, right? And it has nothing.
I think there's a fine line, right? It depends on how that conversation goes. Mm-hmm. But if it's like, hey, I'm only going to push this product if you put in some training for me, that's
well, yeah. So in this situation, they were standardized on a storage vendor, and they were buying a few $1 million more of that particular. Like that vendor is not leaving the company. Like they're not going to rip it out. They were always spending more. But the issue was that they don't necessarily build in training for their employees on the storage team, right? The storage admins and the architects.
I still think it's a fine line. It doesn't matter if it's an incumbent vendor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, any employee that's. I mean, I would think about this if any of the employees on my team went to a vendor and said, "Hey, we don't have the training budget. Could you just like sneak this one in and bundle it and give me a zero line item so it doesn't look like it's hitting anything?" I would question, I'd question that kind of conversation. I don't know about you, Troy. Like I understand where it's coming from, but I think there's a fine line of how that conversation.
The litmus test really is the daylight clause, right? You know, if you would do it in open daylight, would you be comfortable with your boss overhearing that conversation? That's kind of the litmus test. But honestly, the right approach is to say to the decision maker, whoever's writing that check, your boss or whomever the decision maker in the purchase is, say, hey, we've been doing business with company X for some time. Could you ask them if they can, give us some training, low cost, or throw it in? We buy a lot of software from them. I've heard they do that. So you can ask the decision maker to have that conversation at a high level so that procurement's aware of it, legal's aware of it. You're not trying to, be unethical. But as Damien said, we hear horror stories on the kickbacks that happen and the things that are asked for. So we always just defer to open it up into a book that anybody can read.
Yeah. So that's different than a jet ski. Or
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Is it different? Is it different than saying, hey, take me out to the Super Bowl and I'll get you the deal? Or hey, give me training and I'll get you, I think I'll be happier and I'll get you the deal. I don't know.
Yeah. I think so. I like what Troy said. I've never heard that phrase before, but in the daylight, it's almost like if someone read your text, would you be okay with that? Like if your spouse took your phone, would you be worried? Right? It's like if someone had access to things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise, do you have concerns? And I think that's a good test of if it's okay. And I think in this situation specifically, it was more so, hey, we always buy this stuff. We're buying more. They're never going to pay for my training. But I want to get better at this because we spend all this money.
Yeah, but there's a better way to ask that question.
And that way is coming from the manager?
No, it could just be, hey, what kind of deal can we get? Can you bundle this in? And then maybe you lead into, well, if I'm a better administrator, I can leverage your tools more, right? Or maybe there's a trade-off. Sometimes there's a trade-off and companies will say, yeah, if you become one of our advocates, a reference customer, do a white paper, they're more, there's more leverage there to be able to offer some of those things in order to get, discounts or more training.
So maybe that's another thing that I didn't even mention earlier, but I've seen where people offer to do white pages or white papers or conference talks, right? Being able to use those as leverage for either discounts or discounts for training, right? So with budget season around the corner, or the next fiscal year coming up for a lot of people, that's probably something to think about is, how can we leverage either our brand, what we do and the technologies that we bring to the market as an organization, and, kind of co-market with some of the vendors that we work with in favor of where we can get these benefits.
Yeah, just don't assume that that's approved by your company.
No.
Right? You might have a PR team that needs to vet and approve those.
Yeah.
I know Troy knows all about that. I know in the past I've tried to get him on webinars, and it was always like, oh, let me run it by the PR team.
Okay. Yeah.
It's common in most companies, but we're talking a lot about vendor training. And I understand that most vendors, especially larger platforms, have training bundles and things that you pay for. But the question I get a lot of times from people getting started in the industry or trying to progress their own career is what training is the best training for me to take? What's the most respected? What's the most, reliable training? Because there's so many out there now. I mean, everybody and their brother has a YouTube store of PDFs that you can download and get a free certificate. So do you guys have any ideas or recommendations on what to tell people when they say, what's the best training for me?
I don't know if there's what's the best training for for everybody listening and watching this. I think it's subjective. But there are libraries of training. I know LinkedIn has their training.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's others that you can pay a subscription to and get access to their entire library of training, which some of them give you access to get certifications. So I don't know if there's any one. I'll tell you this though. The employees that actually go out and find their own training and do their own testing and do their own education, those are the ones I'd like to reward with the training budget.
Well, if it was me and I was looking for training, and I'm doing it for, obviously it's part of the work that I do, cybersecurity, and it's part of security work. What I would do is I would just go out and look at other jobs, and I would look to see what sort of qualifications they're looking for, what sort of certifications, because it's always going to be on an application, right? Or not a job posting. It's going to say, need to have this, prefer to have this, would love to have this. And you kind of just like jot that down, and then you just tally it up. Maybe look through 100 job postings and see the ones that have the most recurring instances on these job postings. Could just be a good way for you to understand like what companies are looking for, right? Because you can go for a certain training and it'd be good for you, but if you're looking at career trajectory and growth, not everyone values what you would value. And if you're looking from financially, like how do you make the most of your time? Probably focusing on what people care about. And
but don't tie certifications to training, because that's another whole different topic, right? Do you really value the certification, or do you value the knowledge? And I don't think they're the same thing all the time. Mm-hmm. You can learn through getting the certification, but if your goal is to get just a certificate and a piece of paper, that's different than actually going out there trying to learn. We've been talking about vendor training. That's product related. Maybe there's certifications for those vendors. Not always. Yeah. But is it really necessary for you to really understand what you're doing?
And some of these vendors have created, very complex ecosystems around their training. Like people spend their whole careers trying to get to a certain level of a products administrator level. I don't want to call any names out, but the SIM platform or the firewall platform that I'm talking about. We all know that people spend their whole career trying to get to those levels.
The virtualization platform. That kind of went, we won't say anything bad. But yeah, I've seen people spend their entire career on certain virtualization certifications only to have issues with things down the line, right?
I've seen people that just collect certifications. But does that really mean that they know it? I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people that have flair. Like from Office Space.
Love it.
The guy
collect certificates.
It's like the banner, or like the Boy Scout. It's not a badge, but it's like the Boy Scout like ribbon across his chest. And it's like, oh, this is my flair. And where's your flair today?
You only have 37 pieces of flair. It's the minimum. Do you just want to do the minimum here?
Exactly. So, but there are people that do that too, right? So I think it's an interesting topic. And as I'm talking to you guys about some of the things that I've seen, questioning my decisions in life, where it's like, is it ethical? For me, I was like, I look at it as always training. I didn't really think of it as like, how could this be perceived the wrong way? It's just like, I'm trying to help someone grow their career. I'm trying to help someone like learn.
Yeah, but there's a proper way to have that conversation. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So maybe the issue in that particular case was the business didn't value training.
No, I don't know if they don't value it. I think it's hard to set aside money for training when maybe you're lacking controls and tools.
Yeah.
Right. So, you have to, what's more important? Is it the training for the employees, or potentially building in the next gen cyber tool? Mm-hmm. Right. And maybe they go hand in hand. I don't know. There's a balance though, right? You can't just go all in on tools without making sure the employees and the resources are up to speed. And then there's also culture. Like Troy was saying, you want to keep people motivated. And if you're never training them, never giving them new technologies, that's one aspect. They're not going to be happy, not motivated. So the culture kind of, morale dies.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's just assume that you're working in a place that is less likely to do training, right? And we'll say that you're an engineer, right? And you know that it's really tough to get training. Maybe what are some ways that people can find a way to make that happen, right? So I would just say there's local events, right? You can go to local events. You can go. So here's another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is, especially at the local events, they're usually like $100 to get in. And a lot of times people say, hey.
Oh, sometimes they're free.
Well, yeah. So, but they always have a charge for someone, right? But if you're on LinkedIn, if you know someone that is, a panelist, here's a really good one. Generally, if someone is on a panel, in a lot of cases, they're given a code, right? Or if they're a vendor at a booth, they're given codes. And those codes are essentially usually like 100% subsidy of the entry fee. So where a lot of people will go to a technology event and say, hey, this is $100 to get in, $150 to get in, they'll pay it, right? And say, oh, this is for, maybe they'll write it off for work or put it in as an expense. But I've seen it where people wouldn't go to events. And when I say, hey, like, are you going to spend? Like, oh, no, it's like $200. I'm not going to go. I'm like, oh, well, why don't you just use this code? They use the code and they get in for free. So that's another thing that I think is worth pointing out, is that there are a lot of events that are local to you, whether they're ISSA or like corporate sponsored events that are run by organizations that, you know, do like kind of like major city events. A lot of times they'll have codes for students or employees that work in the technology space, and generally those two. So students, education, anything education, student, I'm sure government as well. But a lot of times you can get in for free.
Yeah, I mean, even a couple $100, not a bad investment if you're going to be there to learn.
Yeah, well, I think that's more so geared towards like students, right? A couple $100 for someone that's maybe freshly graduated, you recently graduated within the last like few months is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I get it. $200 is a lot of money to some people.
So,
but think about how much you spent on your
college.
Your one class, right? Or your college degree.
I think it's more so an idea of, well, if you don't have the resources at work to get training, there are ways to still get, to go out there and go to these events and learn at close to nothing, was maybe my thought.
Yeah.
So there's that. But
I'll say this though, because I do attend a lot of those conferences as either a speaker or a panelist. Troy and I were on one earlier this year together. Actually, the first panel that we'd been on together. That was kind of fun.
It was fun, yeah.
Yeah.
South Florida in the summer.
That was in Florida. I got a picture. Maybe we could post it. Me in a suit looking down at the beach.
Oh, yeah?
That's totally unfair.
Who took the picture?
I did a selfie.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we can splash it up on the screen.
Okay.
But don't go into those conferences thinking, hey, it's a day off, or I'm just going to go and pick up swag. Because you always have those people, right?
Oh,
come in
100%
with the big bag, and all there is to pick up the free t-shirts, the free socks, whatever else is free, but they're not actually there to learn anything.
And by the way, to those people, you know, you guys, if you do that, you stick out like a sore thumb. The folks that are there to learn, to actually participate and take advantage of the knowledge being transferred at those events, you know, they're very engaged. And the folks that just come there to eat the lunch and go back to their room and, you know, come back just in time for the happy hour, it's very noticeable. You know what I mean? If you're going to do that, let somebody else come in your place, because there's a lot more being said that it's valuable to someone than just picking up a free pair of socks.
Yeah.
And I got way too many socks.
I give them to my kids because they like to put them on, roll them all the way up to like their knees, and then just run around the house. I like leg warmers almost. Yeah, I've seen a few people that just walk around with like a backpack and they just like unzip, load up.
Yeah, but some people aren't even that. They're not even that sneaky. They'll just load up a bag and you see them toting around 2 big bags.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Okay. So don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. If you're going to go to these conferences, try to learn something.
Exactly. And I think there's so many, you know, very cheap or free ways to get to these conferences. You know, you have local chapters of the cybersecurity meetups and stuff like that, where you have guest speakers come in, InfraGard, ISSA, ISC Squared. You know, these chapters are nationwide, and they're always having something, trying to get people into the industry. So there's a lot of free ways to get your foot in the door besides having to spend money. But some of these smaller, I say smaller conferences, they're not Black Hat, they're not RSA, but these smaller regional conferences, like the one Damien and I spoke at, are very good ways to meet tremendous people in the industry. In fact, in South Florida, we met the CISO for Carnival Cruise Lines, a couple of power companies, big banks. So you never know who you're going to run into when you go to these conferences. So it's more than just knowledge transfer. It's also building out your network.
Yeah, networking is actually really, really important. We talked about that a lot. So these conferences and the community events get you, plugged in to the local community.
Yeah. So how about this? this Thursday, September 4th, East Valley. Was it East Valley Security Meetup?
Yeah. So if you're in the Phoenix area, there is a local meetup that happens the first Thursday of every month. Well, I'll drop the link below in the description. Check it out if you can't make this Thursday.
Every first Thursday, right?
Every first Thursday.
Yeah, I'll be there. So I've been to a few of them. Just go show up, meet a bunch of people. If you're going to drink, you just buy your own drink. If you don't drink, you don't pay for anything, right? So free event, right? Yeah. So that covers like the free part of it, but
yeah, and then there's a lot of those coming up. If you don't know what's happening in your community, just ask. Because I think even here, Phoenix and Las Vegas, over the next 4 or 5 months, there's probably 4 of these, 4 different conferences happening.
At least I can think of 2.
Yeah.
I can think of 2 here in Phoenix, before the end of the year, right? So, okay, well, so that kind of covers like, well, if we can't get it at work. I think
so. You back to the point where you said not asking for it. I think that's a very good point. There's a lot of employees that don't actually state what their goals are, and so if you're not working with your leaders to talk through what your career goals are, then that's part of the problem. So it may not. I think a lot of good leaders should initiate that conversation and say, "Look, what do you want to do with your career? Let me try to help you get there." I have that conversation a lot. So every leader, if you're listening to this, have that conversation with your team. They'll really enjoy that conversation because you've moved your way up the ladder. How did you do that? And how would you mentor somebody to do that themselves? If you're an employee and your manager or leader has not had that conversations with you, initiate it. Yeah,
you should start.
It shows initiative to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about my career. I see that you're in this position. How did you get there? And what do you recommend for me?" Maybe it's not exactly the same path, but start to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think there's some personality types that are too shy to ask for something because then they think they're becoming a problem, and the manager might look negatively on them. But, I want to assuage that fear and say, we love to see that motivation, people who want to learn, who want to improve their own trajectory. And so, it is a bit nerve-wracking sometimes of people who are introverts and don't like to, have that conversation. But, test yourself, give yourself that opportunity to have that conversation because you might be happily surprised with how it turns out.
And if you're worried that your boss or manager or leader isn't going to like that you ask for it, maybe that's not the best place for you to be, right?
I don't know anyone who would not like to have that conversation at the leadership level.
I don't either.
Well, no.
Well, what I'm thinking is,
I've known some managers in the past who, this is many, many years ago, where they didn't want the people below them to get trained up because they were insecure about their own job and their own skills and their own abilities. So you may have a manager like that. You need to figure out a way around that because those kind of toxic managers are hard to work for, hard to work with, and they can really stunt your career.
I haven't come across those in a long time. I'd say, over 10 years, 15 years ago.
Yeah. We're going to coin a phrase, if they're a beta boss.
It's been 10 years for me too, Damien, but I guess maybe that was the way it was back in those days, back in our day. But watch out for those beta bosses.
Beta boss.
Yeah. I mean, look, today you may start your career in the SOC, right? That's probably most commonplace. Or GRC. I think that's the second commonplace. We're looking at policies and audits. But, do you really need to stay there for the rest of your career? The answer is no. I mean, some people do, so don't get me wrong. Some people really like that work and they just move up in that field, but some jump to other areas, right? So it's not uncommon. I think probably more people transition to other jobs than actually stay in those roles.
Yeah. So, okay. So that kind of makes me think of another point. It's not necessarily about training, but it's more about compensation. I'm going to give you a very, very specific example. We talked about it last week. Or was it last week? It might have been a week before. But there is someone that I know that is a CISO. And they have an entire team, right? And someone on their team was recruited by another organization locally. And when it came down to giving notice, they did. And what was discovered was they were making almost double at the new place that they would have at the existing place. So I think there's 2 problems here. Either, not necessarily 2 problems, but two situations is if you're not giving people the training and you're not paying them like a market value for what they do, you're at a high risk of losing them, right? And I think you said it last week, Damien, where you're happy to get someone to leave and like kind of like go out and like grow professionally. I'm trying to remember what you said exactly, but it was along those lines where like a lot of times you're happy to see people leave because you know that they're going on to grow. But in this situation, they tried to keep the person, but there's no way that they were going to be able to match the compensation, right? So I think it's about the compensation part of it. So what are you supposed to do if
it's a whole package? So I would say compensation is just one part of the package. You could be paid really, really well, but have a really miserable time there. And so you got to think back into, well, is the money worth it?
Okay.
What's my happiness worth, right? So I can't answer that for every single situation, but it's something you got to think about. What's the culture of that company? Compensation is only one piece of it because there's other things that add into that compensation. We just talked about training, right? What about equity? You might have equity. You might have a pension. I don't know, right? There's other things. Yeah, there's other things that make up that compensation, not just the salary. And then maybe growth trajectory. So if you're getting paid, high amount or overpaid for that job, potentially, I'm not saying everybody's overpaid, but you're getting an offer that's double. Why are they having to go out there to pay you double? Is that really the market, are they having a hard time keeping people?
Well, here's another thing too, Damien. I think about our industry is that it's so varied in the compensation packages. From engineering all the way up through leadership and security. You could see the difference of a CISO making, $200,000 to $250,000 all the way up to seven figures. I mean, there's that big, diversity of, what people pay depending on the industry of the parent company. And so I think that all has to come down to, what you will tolerate, what you'll accept. And then once you get in the door, making sure that you make a name for yourself and keep progressing upward to try to improve your situation, no matter if you're working at one of those companies that pays a lot or one that is local but pays less.
So have you guys had it where people have requested training and like career development, like funds as part of their package, not necessarily kind of their compensation, but more so like, hey, if I'm going to get paid $100,000 a year, I ask that 10% be
because you can't, because the budget for training changes year over year. So you never know. You can't commit to that. What I would recommend though is you make sure, flip it around. So if you're negotiating a salary, why don't automatically include $10,000 a year from your salary as training?
Oh, so, okay. So
so instead of saying, okay, I'm making this much, give me another $10,000. And then now you cover your own training.
Yeah. So what that reminds me of is I know of someone that is a CISO that negotiates liability insurance for them personally through their salary.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's common.
Okay.
That conversation is common. I don't know how common it is for CISOs to get that. Troy, maybe
It's getting better.
Yeah.
It's coming around after the Joe Sullivan, Tim Brown type of cases, but it's getting there.
So that makes me think of, well, that's obviously not the same as training, but that was built into the compensation, expecting to spend that money with a third party outside of the compensation package, right? So like you said, and maybe if you can't say dollar amount here, training here, you just know as an employee, if you want to do a SANS course, it's $8,000, $10,000 a year. So you find a way to say, here's what I'd like to get paid, but I'd like to get this number, and you justify and say, every year I plan to do these trainings professionally, right? The company will benefit, so you're essentially paying for my training, but it's not coming out of training budget, it's coming out of the compensation package.
Yeah, you just need to get approved time off.
Yeah, I kind of like that because I feel like that's more guaranteed. But then
I kind of dislike that because what I feel like is once you start getting that in your salary and your paycheck and it goes in the bank, you start paying bills, you kind of lose that, guardrail around that $10,000. So you may end up in a situation where you didn't get the training and you can't afford to get it now, and it might be tough. So That's a double-edged sword.
It is. But it's also financial management, which this is not a financial channel. So
We got to have Damien do a podcast on that. I remember.
Yeah. Okay, but as possible, right? Well, how whether you are a good steward of the money is a different situation. But at least if you're looking to grow your career and maybe develop certain things, certain tools, or certain skills, that's something that you want to maybe potentially negotiate.
Something to think about.
Yeah,
but like Troy said, it's hard to not touch that money.
Yeah,
it's your bank account. I have this conversation actually a lot with people starting their careers about just making sure you're not spending your entire paycheck from day one. Try to put some aside for retirement, for investments. This would be considered an investment in yourself, right?
Yeah. I've got some questions on how you could do that, from probably what a CPA would recommend, but I won't say those here. But I'm thinking how could you start, a business or consulting and then run the training through that? But
no, most people aren't even.
They're not thinking about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things I love about this conversation is when you ask an employee, we talked about, during their annual performance and evaluations or their reviews, even, just, stopping by to have a one-on-one with them, asking them, what is it that you want to do with your career? Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? That's a very old question, but I mean, really asking them what is it that you like about what you do now? And where do you see yourself going? What do you want to do? The funny thing is that you get the most amazing answers. People come out with such amazing answers that you would have never put with that person or thought about was their trajectory. And it's just amazing to hear the stories about how they love this certain part about their job and they want to get better at it. Or they see that Susie has this function that looks very appealing to them. They may want to cross-train and maybe help Susie out when she's out of the office, and then also maybe look at that for a career progression. So, I just love hearing the stories from the people that are just really heartfelt and honest, and there's no guards around what they're asking or what they're saying.
Be careful though, right? Because if your dream is to open a restaurant and you're going to tell your boss, hey, I'm only doing this job so I can save enough money to open a restaurant.
Never had
Probably
that.
Not
Never had
training.
Somebody tell me that. That's brutal honesty there.
Yeah, maybe some things elaborate. Said. Yeah.
Don't have that conversation.
But okay, so we kind of cover what you can do for free, how you can try and find a way to get it. Now we'll say you have to justify the expense, right? So I was thinking about this earlier today because we kind of said the topic is going to be this, and I was kind of thinking about what I would be interested in learning if I was in a security role and the different situations. There's no money, there's some money, maybe there is money. How hard is it for people to go to Black Hat, right? From your guys' perspective, because the tickets, if you buy a 26 Black Hat right now, it's probably $3,500.
Well, I don't think you can buy 26 yet, but yeah, you'd have to budget $4,000 for the pass and travel. So you get your flight, your hotel, your meals. Maybe you can get some free meals if you go to events, but you might be looking at $5,000-$6,000 once you're done.
Yeah.
Sure.
So my question then is, if someone wants to go to one of these events, they're going to be out of work for Black Hat for 3 or 4 days, right? You figure they fly in Sunday, they might leave Thursday.
You're not going to work on Friday.
No. Okay.
You're still recovering.
So you're out for 5 days. But if someone came to you and they want you to approve, either you, Damien, or Troy, they want you to approve the cost to go to Black Hat. What sort of things should they should they bring to your desk and say, hey, I'm looking to go to Black Hat. Here's why. What it would be a compelling argument for them to bring where you say, hey, I agree. Obviously, you guys have been there, so you know the value of it in doing these different things. So maybe it's less of a difficult time for them to get it from you. And just assume that whoever they're asking maybe has never been to Black Hat. They don't understand the value of some of these conferences. So you have to basically get someone to separate from that amount of money for something that maybe they don't see the value in. So what sort of things would you have to see?
I have seen a lot of these requests, right? And these can be as detailed as the employee thinks is necessary to convince me and of course the budgeteers that they need to go. And so, as you mentioned, it starts out with here's my job description, or here's what I do, and here's how these trainings are going to directly impact my ability to do this better. And here's the things I'm looking forward to. Most times they'll go through the entire Black Hat encyclopedia of the talks that are going to happen. They'll call out the ones that are specific for their job role, and they'll say why it's important. And then, sometimes travel and training are two different budgets. So sometimes you have to get two things approved. You have to approve the $4,000 pass for the training, which is sometimes easier than the travel to Vegas during Black Hat when everything's really expensive. And when I said earlier, recovering on Friday, what I meant was the miles and miles and miles of walking that you do. And it's 6 a.m. to midnight every day. And so it's an exhausting week. And I'm not talking about anything other than just the sheer exhaustion of that week. So,
I think that's good advice. Take a look at all the talks happening. I think this year it would have been easy to say, there's a lot of talks on AI. There's a lot of labs or AI security and threats from AI. Most likely your organization is thinking about using AI. So just look at the course content, the talks, and then correlate that to a business outcome that your company's trying to do. And you can then business justify it that way to say, here's the value to the organization if I go to these conferences.
Yeah. So I went to a conference probably 10 years ago. It was for National Instruments. And at the time, I was doing all the programming on like FPGAs and like wireless DACs, data acquisition systems. So it's kind of like collecting data, and I did all the back end. And it was like full stack, right? But it was for data acquisition. And I had done all the programming, and I did it on the front side. So we were using like Windows Forms and all this other stuff. So secure by design wasn't in my mind at the time, right? But I remember they had this conference. I want to go. And it was actually in Dallas. And it was like 5,000 or 6,000. And I told my boss, Tom, I say, hey, like I want to go to this. And he's like, yeah, go. Yeah, well, whatever it is, we'll pay for it. We'll go, right? And then I went, and when I came back, I had to do a report on everything that I had learned and how it was going to be useful to the business. It was my very first conference, right? And I went to a bunch of different events, but like the classes while I was there. And I took notes on my laptop and all this other stuff, but I never had to justify it, right? So I like the idea of going through and seeing the full talk track of what's out there, and maybe even taking from internal documents kind of the things that the business is trying to do, and tagging a course or the course and maybe an outcome to what the business is trying to do. Yeah. Because then it's like, it's not it's obviously it's for you as a person going.
Well, no, there has to be benefit to the business as well.
Well, yeah.
So if you came back and said, look, I'm going to also write a report and then teach the rest of the team everything I learned.
Yeah.
There's a greater value than just you as an individual.
Yeah. So I was the only person doing this stuff. So there was no one else to teach for me specifically in my case. But, when I was going for like career development. But being able to point it to what the business is looking for. And I would imagine that would make it way easier for anyone to get it approved, because it's one thing to say, hey, I want to go for career development. But if it's another thing to saying, hey, obviously that's a benefit, but we're also going for the business because I can use these things in.
Here's one of the things I like to use, like in my mind.
Okay.
What does it say?
So what?
So what? So my shirt says so what for you guys aren't watching. Because if you write that justification, read it back, and then ask yourself, so what? Is it deep enough? And then maybe you add some more stuff, and then you ask yourself again, so what? Right? Because that's this iteration of trying to justify or business justify what you're trying to get out of it or what you're trying to prove to your organization. I think it just helps with the whole thought process.
So you're like the Kaizen, like the 7 whys, right? For, was it Six Sigma, lean type stuff, where you keep asking why, and eventually you get to like the root value or the root issue.
Simon Sinek, find your why. Yeah.
No. So that's a different one. So that's Simon Sinek is find your why, start with why. I'm thinking of, I think it was Toyota, where he had the 7 whys. So say you had a situation and you ask why, like, well, why? And then you find the answer. Well, why is that? And then you come to another answer. And it's like, well, why is that? And it's like if by the time you ask yourself 7 whys, you find the root cause, right? I'll give you a really good example. One of our friends had their ceiling fall down, right? I mentioned this the other day. Their ceiling in their den on a 2-story house fell down. Why? Well, obviously there was water damage. Why? Because the pan of under the condenser of the AC unit in the ceiling overfilled with water. Why did it overfill? Turns out there were rats up there. And they're renting this house, right? So they didn't realize that they had an issue. Well, there's rats, right? Well, why? Well, the rat leftovers essentially drained or clogged the drain, right? And then, so you had a piece of drywall fall, and that's the issue. But the real issue was the rat feces that had cleaned or clogged the drain pan is what caused the whole thing. But if you say, oh, what happened? Oh, it fell down. Like, no, that's not what happened. That's the outcome. But what actually happened was like 4 or 5 whys back, it was because of the rats, which is terrible to say, but you know.
So, I mean, all those exercises give you, a more
like
thought
clarity
into clarifying or justifying.
Clarity of thought. But one of the things, Fern, you mentioned, I love the idea of the report when you come back from the conference. What we used to do is if we sent some of our leadership, like directors or senior managers, to one of these conferences, they would have to come back and do a presentation for all staff. We have all staff every 2 weeks. They would get up and present what they learned, what they saw, and we would actually record that and put it out on the team site so everybody could come back and watch it. And it's valuable because it's so important to get the value back from that conference, because you just send people out there, they spend money, they sleep in nice hotels and eat nice food. What are you getting from that? You put it onto a recording and share it with the team, they can get, immense value from that.
Yeah. I mean, here's another strategy I've used in the past early in my career is I would, ask for the company to pay for my pass to get in or a ticket. And then I would find a cheaper way to travel there.
Oh,
right. Okay. So if it's close enough, maybe I'll drive. So there's no cost or lower cost because it's just fuel. Or if I have family in that area, I might stay with family. And so I'll try to offset it by doing some of those things. Or I've done this in the past too. I've stayed in a hostel in a room full of guys in bunk beds, just so I could go to that city and go to the conference, right? And I covered that myself. I mean,
$7 a day.
I came back with pink eye, so was it worth it? Maybe it was still worth it.
No, because it was. There's a difference.
I didn't lose my eye.
Well,
put eye drops in, and
okay, but hear me out. There's a difference between getting pink eye at your house and getting pink eye
or a hostel
in a bed in Vegas.
Oh, this wasn't in Vegas, but in a hostel.
Or a hostel, wherever it's at.
Yeah.
Because here's the reality. Pink eye from your home, you know where it came from. Pink eye anywhere else, you don't know where that came from.
So pink eye from a hostel, cost you some antibiotics. Having this story to tell on a podcast years later, priceless.
There you go.
Oh man. Well, okay. So I think we kind of covered the full spectrum of finding, free, finding ways to get it included, or finding ways to kind of subsidize it through compensation, or finding how to justify it to the business. Is there a part that we didn't cover for people that are looking to kind of stay on we'll say bleeding edge, but like stay on top of their career growth?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is you got to just show the initiative to go and find it, because sometimes there's free events. There's even free webinars that you can go and watch. Be careful though. Some of them are very much salesy, and then it's slanted towards one specific product. But just be smart enough to say who's sponsoring it.
Yeah.
Right? And then just realize that, hey, this is a little bit skewed. But then you can use your own investigations to figure out, okay, what else is out there?
Yeah, I think the number one question people should always ask is, what is the incentive for the person telling me what to do, right? Because when you think about what the incentive is, you generally kind of realize what the intended outcome is, right? And a lot of times, like when you say webinar, I say sales pitch disguised as a talk, right? Because a lot of times it's just, here's a webinar on how we can use this technology, and you show up and it's one, you signed up, now they got your email. Now you're going to have a bunch of follow-ups. Whether you show up or not, you're going to get an email, right? And then whatever you get on there is kind of reminds me of when two people or when a company is talking about their product, they usually have them compared to someone else. And it's like left box or left column for them is all green check boxes. And it's like, oh, like we're amazing. And then the right column is a competitor. And it's like X, 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 X. Like, well, of course. And I guarantee you, if we went to them, the competitor, they're going to have a green all on one side. And then the same company that is saying, we're good is going to be on the right column with all X's, right? So it's kind of like, well, what is the incentive? And the incentive is obviously to get you to buy or do something for them, for their product. So that's just something I like to ask is, what's the incentive?
Well, on the other side too, if they offer you a gift card or AirPods to attend the webinar.
Don't do that. There's a lot of good webinars out there though, so I don't want to really crash on all the different types of webinars, right? I mean, there are definitely vendors slanted, but there's some really good ones out there.
Yeah, there's good ones.
Do your homework. Make sure you're going into it. And especially if there's a diverse panel of practitioners sitting there talking, and it's not a salesperson from a company, that's going to be a good webinar. A lot of good information is getting passed around right now, especially with the speed of AI. I mean, things are changing day by day. So there's a lot of people that are talking about some really good things. So try to avoid the sales pitches, but look for some good, knowledge transfers.
Or what you could do is you can go to DTF Cyber Podcast dinner, because those aren't pitches. Those are more like going, hanging out, meeting a bunch of peers, or maybe even people that could be like a direct report, right? Meet all kinds of people at DTF Cyber Podcast dinners. Just a thought. But you probably got to be in Phoenix for those.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you want to give Fern your email address.
Nah. I might ask you to buy me some camera stuff. Get 5 cameras in here. Okay. Well, I think we're good then. Hopefully we covered some of the best parts of the topic. But if there's something that we didn't talk about, leave us a comment or send us a note, and we'll try and bake it into maybe one of the future episodes as a kind of like a building on this episode.
Yeah, I don't think this is the last time we'll touch this topic.
No, this is for sure the last time we're talking about pinkeye.
Hostels, yeah.
The pinkeye story. Yeah. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, then maybe like usual, we just go around the room. Troy, you got anything that maybe we didn't say or something?
Yeah, just definitely don't be that person that's sitting back waiting for your manager to approach you about training. Take that initiative, whether it's a conversation or something that you want to do, go get it.
That's right. You own your own development plan. And so you come up with what you want to do with your career and what you want to learn, build that plan, and have those conversations. Because if you never ask for it, guess what? Never going to get it.
Yeah. And if you're in leadership and you haven't asked your people, how can I support you? What can I do to support you? Or you're not in leadership and you haven't asked for that help. I think, like I was talking to my wife the other day, and she was talking about how some people don't ask for help, right? And how people assume the best in situations, but if someone doesn't say what their situation truly is, right, that people don't understand and they just assume that everything is good. So if you're not asking for training, or you're not telling, your leaders what you're looking to do, they may not even be thinking about that because they're worrying about things that they have, things that like the fires that they're putting out. So probably the most important part is to communicate that this is where you want your career to go. This is how you see it being done, and asking them if there's a way that they can support you. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people expect that people will do that for them. But
remember, it's also a conversation. Don't go in there demanding.
Well, yeah. I don't think anyone would ever demand, but I think it's more so like asking for the help, right? And if maybe you're not confident enough in asking, just show up to some of these events. They're free. Chances are you're going to meet someone in a similar situation. You might make a friend, and then hey, you might have a study buddy. I don't know, maybe. But that's it for today. We'll see you next week. Till then, stay safe.